For centuries, a really simple question of counting has been at the very heart of one of history's most debated timelines. Did Jesus' death and resurrection actually fulfill the prophecy of 3 days and 3 nights? Or is there a glaring contradiction hidden in plain sight? Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to be like historical investigators, piecing together the evidence, one clue at a time.
So here it is. This is the quote that kicks off the whole debate. And you gotta understand, this isn't just some casual remark. It's presented as the definitive sign, a direct parallel to the story of Jonah. And look at the wording. It's so precise. 3 days and 3 nights. That's a specific claim that seems to set a pretty high bar for fulfillment.
And this is the core of the problem, right? The traditional timeline, the one that's been accepted for millennia, puts the crucifixion on a Friday and the resurrection on the following Sunday. But just do the math. That's one full day, parts of 2 other days, but it's only 2 nights. So what gives? How do we reconcile the prophecy with the historical account? Let's figure it out.
Here's our game plan. First, we're going to pinpoint the exact day of the crucifixion using our first big clue. Then, we'll uncover the really unique circumstances of that particular weekend. After that, and this is the key to the whole thing, we are going to decode how ancient cultures actually counted time. And finally, we'll put it all together and see what we've got. All right, our investigation starts with our first and maybe most foundational clue, a specific phrase that's used to describe the day Jesus died. This is literally the anchor point for our entire timeline. So our first clue is this Greek word periskue. Now, it literally just means preparation. But by the 1st century, it wasn't a generic term anymore. It had become the common technical name for Friday. And why? Well, because Friday was the day of intense preparation, all the cooking, all the cleaning, before the Saturday Sabbath began, which was a mandatory day of rest. You can just feel that contrast, right? A day of frantic work right before a day of holy rest.
And here's what's so critical here, the consensus. We're talking Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all 4 independent accounts use this exact term, periskua, to date the crucifixion. When you synthesize these accounts, they create this incredibly consistent historical narrative, and that gives us a rock-solid anchor point. The event took place on a Friday.
Okay, let's move on to our second clue and see how this all builds. Knowing the crucifixion was on a Friday is one thing, but we really have to understand the unique circumstances of that specific weekend, which created this sense of extreme urgency you read about in the Gospels. The Gospel of John adds this critical little detail. He says the Jewish leaders were rushing to get the bodies taken down from the crosses because the Sabbath that was about to start was a high day. This tells us it wasn't just any regular Saturday. So what exactly made it high or so special? This is where we see this really rare convergence happening. First, you have the normal weekly Sabbath, which of course is always on Saturday. But that year, it also happened to fall during the Passover festival, which was another required holy day of rest. So this overlap made it a doubly sacred event, a high Sabbath. And according to Jewish burial customs, it was absolutely imperative that the bodies be buried before the special day began at sunset on Friday. And that explains the incredible rush to get Jesus' body into the tomb. Okay, so we've established the when and the why of the burial. Now we've got to tackle the central puzzle, that phrase 3 days and 3 nights. And it turns out the solution isn't in math, it's in understanding ancient language.
And here is the big breakthrough. We just can't apply our modern, stopwatch-like precision to an ancient text. That phrase, 3 days and 3 nights, it functioned as a Jewish idiom. It was a recognized figure of speech that had a specific cultural meaning. It's kind of like how we might say a couple of days to mean a short period, not literally just 2.
The real key to understanding this idiom is a concept called inclusive counting. It was the standard way of keeping time back then. And the rule is actually pretty simple. Any part of a day, even if it's just a few minutes, counts as one full day in the total. And we see this principle of inclusive counting all over the place in the scriptures. A baby is circumcised on the 8th day, right? That counts the day it was born as day 1. The 7-day Feast of Tabernacles is described as having an 8th day. I mean, once you see the pattern, you realize this was just how they talked about time. And this shows us exactly how the language worked in practice. You have the gospel writers using phrases like on the 3rd day, after 3 days, and in 3 days, totally interchangeably. To them, these all pointed to the exact same thing, an event that spanned across 3 calendar days, not a literal 72-hour period.
Okay, so we have all our clues on the table: the day of preparation, the high Sabbath, and this principle of inclusive counting. So now let's put all the pieces together and actually reconstruct the timeline.
Here is exactly how it works. On Friday, the preparation day, Jesus dies and is buried before sunset. That part of Friday counts as day 1. On Saturday, the high Sabbath, he is in the tomb for the entire 24-hour period. That's day 2. Then, early on Sunday morning, the first day of the week, he's resurrected. That small portion of Sunday counts as day 3. 1, 2, 3 days. See? It fits perfectly.
So let's be super clear. The prophecy of 3 days and 3 nights was fulfilled exactly as a first-century audience would have understood it. It was never about counting 72 literal hours. It was an idiomatic expression for a period that simply touched 3 separate days, perfectly paralleling Jonah's experience. And just like that, the apparent contradiction completely dissolves when we read the text through the lens of its own time and culture.
And that's what makes these details so incredibly fascinating. Things like the Paraskaye, the High Sabbath, the customs of inclusive counting, these aren't mistakes. They are historical and cultural fingerprints. For believers, they don't create a contradiction at all. Instead, they ground the entire narrative in a very specific time and place, authenticating the account not as a myth, but as a real event that happened in history.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? When writers are this careful, this precise, getting all the small, verifiable details of timing and culture and language exactly right, what does that level of precision suggest about their claims regarding the central, most important event they are describing? It's something to think about.